Hi guys, and welcome to Total Technik. Today we're working on the Audi Q7. This is the 4L model with the rear Brembo brake calipers, and in this video what we're going to be doing is showing you how to do a brake pad change. Let's get it done. So the first thing we need to do is take a look at removing the rear wheels. Now on the Audi Q7 here, one very important thing to point out is some Q7s have air suspension, others don't. Now if your particular one does have air suspension, it actually has a jacking mode, and what that will do is it will actually lock that air suspension so that when you lift the car up, it's not trying to constantly readjust, and that can be accessed by the onboard computer, the MMI system. So before we actually lift the vehicle off of the floor, what we want to do is slacken off the wheel nuts. The reason for that is if you first lift the car up and then try and undo them, the whole wheel can spin. Whereas if you just slacken them off a little bit with the weight still on the ground, then they're really easy to remove completely once you've actually got it off the air and there's no weight on the wheels. So next you want to grab yourself a breaker bar and the correct size socket, and we're going to get these slackened off. When you slacken these off, you probably want to do them maximum half a turn. So next you're going to jack up the corner of the car that you need to work on. It's always a good idea when you're jacking up your car to place some blocks, some pieces of wood, a couple of bricks, something like that, under the front wheels of the car, especially if you have a manual transmission. Another thing to point out quickly is at this stage your handbrake should be disengaged. So be careful when you remove your last wheel bolt, because depending on how stuck onto the hub the wheel is, the wheel could come loose at this stage. Just be prepared for that. A bit of a wobble, just to move it off the hub. Then we've still got it nice and low, so we haven't clattered the top inside of our wheel. So we just slide that directly sideways and we can roll that out of the way. Okay, so one of the key things that tends to get stuck in these is this little pin that goes across the centre right here. We're going to be knocking this out later in the video, but to make this a little bit easier, especially if yours has got a little bit of corrosion or dirt build up on it, what we're going to do is just give it a tiny bit of a clean up, and then what we'll do then is put a little bit of a penetration fluid on it, things like plus gas, liquid wrench, all those kind of products, so whatever you've got handy, and just help to soak these in to hopefully make it a little bit easier for us to get this out in a short while. So to help us clean this up, you see we've got quite a build up of dirt just where the pin passes through this kind of metal part of the caliper right here. So I'm just going to give that a bit of a scrape just around the edges with the hook tool and start getting rid of some of this build up of gunk. There's no point putting the penetration fluid on the top of it, because obviously that's just an extra layer of stuff that it's got to try and get through to actually get into the joint. So it's going to spend a couple of minutes giving that a bit of a clean up, removing the worst of the build up. And we'll just do the same quickly on the opposite side as well. So exactly the same, just give it a bit of a clean up. Every bit you can get off is going to help the removal process. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab a penetration fluid. We're using plus gas this time, but products like liquid wrench and all those other brands, there's hundreds of them out there, these help quite a lot. So what I'm going to do, just give it a bit of a soak where the joints are, and also where this pin passes through the pads. Give it a little bit on there as well, and of course this opposite side here. And you can give that about 10 minutes to soak in. What that'll do is that'll work its way into those joints and just help to ease it up a little bit as we go. So if you look on the rear of the caliper, you've got the brake cable. This is the wear sensor cable. Comes into a little electrical connector just there, and we need to get this disconnected. These can be quite tricky to get off because the end that you're trying to remove is actually within this little metal bracket, so they can be a little bit sticky. So my preferred method on these is to get a hook tool. You can reach in, grab that little tab on the back, pull that downward, and then try and wiggle it off by hand. But sometimes if there's dirt and stuff in there, it won't disconnect easily by hand. You can put a screwdriver in and open it up as long as you're careful, but the other way of doing it is to come into the front and just to lift the It's like a little flap in there, I'll show it to you in a minute. So you put your hook tool in, get it under the edge of the flap and just lift the flap up, and then you can start to wobble it loose. Yeah, he's coming. There he goes. So I'll just show you on the plug there. So hopefully you can see okay. There's a little flap just there. Lifts up and down, and that's what locks it into place. So what you do is you put the hook tool in, and you can kind of feel it when you get it underneath, and just twist it a little bit. That'll lift it up like so, and then start to wobble the thing and pull it backwards, and it'll pop off. Okay, so now we're on this brake wear cable, just popping out of this little slot in there, and also you've got to unhook it from the bottom of this spring right here. So our next stage is going to be to remove this little pin. You can just see the head of it that passes through this kind of main pin that goes horizontally across the centre here. So we've got to pull this out to be able to then slide the pin out. This stops the pin from sliding out accidentally during day-to-day use. This one's going to be pretty well stuck in, so we're going to have to fight a little bit with this. Hopefully yours won't be quite as difficult as this, but I'll give you a couple of tips just in case yours is a little bit sticky. Okay, so if yours is sticky as this one is, believe it or not, the easiest way is to actually give it a tap. So what you want to try and do is break the kind of all the dirt and grime that's built up and solidified there. So if you give it a light tap on the end, yeah, I could see that coming off then, and it's moving. It's actually moved in a tiny bit, so that's perfect. That's a good starting point. Now I can grab my hook tool. I'm going to use it on the tip of the metal here, just as a lever. Yeah, this one's coming now. And just push that forward. Get that to a point, so we know that's now going to come out. So I'll grab some pliers and get that removed. And that's what the little pin looks like. So it kind of sits, the pin sits in this little circular section in the middle. So it passes through and clicks into place through there. So we're going to be trying to attack this this pin by tapping it out next, but there's a quick tip for you. Again, if yours has got a bit of corrosion and a bit of gunk solidified on it, there's a quick tip that we can do that will make this process hopefully a tiny bit easier. Now what you're going to need is a punch tool, and this is what you're also going to need to do the punch the pin out in a couple of minutes time. And what you'll find is that the this little spring right here is kind of looks like a H turned on its side. This spring here, there'll be almost no movement between the spring and this pin, so that's going to be an extra little point of resistance. So what we can do to get around this is just give it a quick tap with your punch. Yeah, so now you can see I can actually move it, whereas it wouldn't move at all before. Now because this one's particularly gunky, I'm just going to give it a bit of a clean off in the centre as well. They're not always this bad. This is a particularly bad one. And remember, every little bit of dirt that I'm scraping off here is going to be a point of resistance when it comes to passing it through the pad and through the end there as well. So the smoother you can get it, obviously you can't see all of it because half of it's under the springs. So as much as you can get is certainly going to help. And also because this is a particularly bad one, and we haven't tried it yet, but I'm assuming the worst, I'm going to give this a little bit of penetration fluid as well, just to help us all we can. Now you want to make sure that the punch tool that you choose, the diameter of the actual end of the punch tool is smaller than the diameter of the pin that you're trying to remove. Obviously if you get something that's bigger, it's never going to go through the hole, so you need to make sure it's a lot well, not a lot smaller, but small enough that it will definitely pass through the hole, so you know, a considerable amount smaller. And just for reference, the one that I'm using today is 6mm, and also if you've got a long one, that's going to help the process a heck of a lot. And also for the sake of safety, please make sure that you wear goggles when you do this, and ear protection is also a good idea as well. yours is really stubborn, as this one is, what you've got to do is just keep repeating the process of trying to clean it up as best as you can. Eventually it will go, but you need to get as much of this crud out as you can. As I said, hopefully yours won't have been as long as these clearly have, so yours will hopefully be a lot easier than our one. So we're looking at pretty much worst case scenario. The other thing you can do is just give the pads themselves a bit of a tap. Again, just to try and break any seals, just to try and loosen it up if it's very stubborn. Yeah, so here's our pin. There's a good example there of just how much gunk and rubbish have built up on this. So I said they can be a little bit tricky, as this one was, but the key to it is just to get rid of as much of the build-up of crap from around the sides as you can. Try and scrape off as much as you can. Keep putting the penetration fluid in there, because that will soak in and aid the process, and just keep at it. It will come eventually. So next, removal of the little spring here. It just lifts out. You've kind of got to manipulate it a little bit, just so that you can get the one corner past this little hooked over wire. So that's removed. So next we're going to look at removing the old pads. Okay, so just a quick note with regards to the pushing back of these pistons, rewinding these calipers. The Audi Workshop manual always recommends that you draw off a little bit of fluid from the brake fluid reservoir under your bonnet or hood. The reason being is if you've ever topped that brake fluid up between changes, then when you force that piston back, it's going to potentially force the brake fluid up, and it will have an overflow on your reservoir, and you don't want that stuff dripping through your car. So that's the Audi Workshop manual way of doing it. It's actually to draw off that little bit of fluid before you push those pistons back. Now the other way of doing it is, what you can actually do is attach a line to the nipple on the caliper itself, and then open the nipple, push the pad back. That will force the brake fluid up, out through the line, not back into the brake system of the car. It will come out of your line into your collection bottle, and you can kind of bleed it that way, and then just be sure to lock them off before any air goes back up the line. And that also ensures that any old kind of dirty fluid that's in the caliper doesn't go back up into the car. You're actually getting rid of it. So that's quite a nice way of doing it as well, but it's completely optional, so you've got various different ways that you can do it, but you should always bear in mind that there is a possibility that when you push these back, if your brake fluid reservoir is very full, that it could overflow. So if you're worried about that, check the level of it and put a good amount of blue paper all around it in case you do get any potential spills. But these things are designed to be rewound without it being a problem. It'll only really be a problem if you've topped up the levels. So those are the kind of various options when it comes to pushing these pistons back, of what's going to happen with that brake fluid. So you've got several different options that you can go with. You can go with the Audi Workshop way, draw it off, or you can crack off the nipples and take it out that way. Whatever you like, just make sure that you use the method that you're happiest with, and double check your brake fluid reservoir level before you do anything. So to remove the old pads, obviously the old pads are a lot thinner than the brand new pads will be that are going to be going back in. So to remove the pads, we don't need to fully rewind the pistons in the caliper. We can rewind them just a little bit to enable us to remove the pads. The advantage of that is if you can pull these back just a little bit, move these out of the way, then you can actually have a look at the condition of the whatever's visible on the piston, and also the rubber seals whilst they're expanded. You can have a good look around and check that everything is good and you're happy with everything, and then you can look at fully rewinding them. So for the time being, we're going to rewind them a little bit, just enough to slide them out. Okay, now a good easy way to get these out is just grab yourself a large flat-headed screwdriver. The disc in the middle is vented, so obviously it's got holes in the middle of it. So what you can do is just put it into the slot there on the disc and push it on these little top roller sections just here. So put it in, a little bit of light pressure there, and then repeat. You already see this one's almost ready to come out. Same on the bottom there, put it in a slot and pull it back just here. Again, not too much. See, that one's pretty much ready. And then obviously we'll do the same on the opposite side just here with the other pad. So they're pretty much there. And if you need to wobble them, obviously we're going to wobble them upward and downward in this direction. If they're sticking, as in the backs of the pads are sticking, you can also wobble them that way a little bit. That'll open up the piston just that tiny bit more. See, that one's sticking, so give it that way. And there it comes. There. Okay, so they're ready to come out. So let's get these removed. And here are the old pads. You can see very badly worn. This one far less worn than this one, but both completely worn. So it's a quick notice on the on your pads. The cable, the wear sensor cable. If yours hasn't worn through, i.e. if the light on your dashboard has not come on, then you can actually reuse these. You can just pull them out. But as you can see on this one, this bottom one, it doesn't appear to have cut through. But on this top one here, you can see it's cut through, and you can actually see the metal of the connector there. So that would be what would have triggered the light on the dashboard. So these cannot be reused. We need brand new cables in this instance. And so now's the perfect opportunity to grab your torch, have a little look inside the calipers, and in particular looking at the rubber seals, making sure that everything looks good and healthy on both sides. If you spot an issue, obviously now's the time to get it rectified, but this is a perfect opportunity before you fully rewind the pistons to have a good look and make sure you're happy that everything looks fairly healthy in there. Okay, so I've had a look around and I'm happy with those. So provided that they all rewind okay, which they seem to when I did it by with the screwdriver there, it looked like they were all going to rewind okay. These are good to go. So before we go any further, what we're going to do is fully rewind these pistons back into the body of the caliper. Now there's a couple of ways that you can do this. One, if you've got one available, is to use one of these brake pad spreader tools. This is specifically for pushing the pistons back. So what you can do is get this to the correct size to fit the gap. I'll show you it both ways. Fit it in between two pistons, and then you can just start to expand it. And as it expands, it will start to push the pistons back in. And you should feel when you're doing this that the resistance to push them back is not all that great, and these are rewinding absolutely lovely, so I've got no concerns on those. So what I'll do is I'll stop doing that before they get fully rewound, and I'll show you the way of doing this same process without one of these tools. So the workaround, if you don't have one of the tools available, is to grab your old pads, slot them back in temporarily. And remember, the one on the inside would be the one with the electrical connector. So pop those back in, and then we'll continue the process that we started here. Yeah, that's rewinding. You can feel there's very little resistance there. That was rewinding really nicely. Same on that one. I'll put that one back in upside down. Yeah, got no resistance to that at all. So that's a sign of a good healthy piston. And then what you'll find, because we've spread them in this manner, what we've done is we've actually moved the angle of that brake pad like that, so the piston might not be fully rewound at this stage. So to get it fully rewound, once you've done it in that direction, you can then put it down between the disc and the front of the pad and do it in the opposite direction, like so, like so, yeah, and then same here. And then what you've done there, to start with, we pushed that out, so that created it angled like that, and then when we put it in and we pressed it from the bottom, that straightened it all up, got it nice and flat. So those should now be fully rewound. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the brake pads. A couple of things that we've done is we've had to buy these separately. We've got a brand new pin and clip because the old one wasn't in the best shape. Probably would have cleaned up, it's only a metal pin, but these definitely weren't in good shape. So we've got a brand new pair of the clips, one for this side, one for the other. And additionally, we've had to get hold of the wear sensors. Now, when you buy your pads, these ones only come with the pads. They don't come with any extras. Sometimes, when you buy these, they will come with various components. Sometimes you might get these with them, you won't get that with it. Sometimes you get these with them, and sometimes you can even get the wear sensors included with them as well. So when you're shopping around for your brake pads, always having a look at the various different options, because you might be able to pay an extra, £4 or £5, $6, $7 up front and get one that has all this stuff with it, and that's a lot cheaper than trying to buy it separately later. So just bear that in mind when you're choosing your pads. So for your brake pads, let's just open these up real quick. One pair for this side, one pair for the other side. Now I've already rewound the caliper earlier in the process, pushed the pistons back, so in theory we should have enough space to fit the new pads into. When you're handling the brake pads, remember that the faces of these are slightly absorbent, so you don't want to get any of your grease onto the face of these pads because that will soak in. You can't just wipe it off. So that's very, very important. Always be careful of that. So what we're going to do now is look at the process of popping these back in. So just a quick note for when you connect your wear sensors later on. If you have a look at the pad, they actually have a little kind of ridge that's raised on the pad side, and that's to kind of stop you fitting them in the wrong way, if that makes any sense. So you'll find that they only actually fit in the one way, so they fit in that way, and if you try and put them in the wrong way around, you won't actually be able to get them in. So that's something to bear in mind, and literally when you come to do these, you just push them down. You see it's got a little barb on it, and that will just click into place. So it's always a good idea when you're fitting the pads just to help them out a little bit. They do normally have these little backing plates on them, so they're much better than they used to be years ago. But it's still a good idea where the pistons actually touch the back of the pad, just to get a little thin layer of your brake grease, or you can use copper grease called anti-seize. That's the kind of more traditional product. Just a little thin layer like that. That will help you not only get them in, but that will help things to stop binding to the rear of the pads. Additionally, you'll notice when you look down into the caliper, there's metal pins in there, and that's where these sit. These butt up against these little metal pins. So again, you don't want to get this on the face of the pad, but just where it sits, just there. Again, that will just help that to stop binding and give it a little bit of a lubrication for your installation. So now I just want to slot the pads into place. And the opposite side, exactly the same. So next we've got our brand new spring clip, and then we're going to put that in place. The little kind of bracket for your wire that goes at the bottom, and then you're going to take your pin and you can feed that in from this side. I'm just going to put a little bit of grease on this just to help lubricate it as it passes through. You find you've got to compress these springs quite a lot by hand. There we go, to get them started. Also, they've got a little ridge on them. Kind only got to do it twice. There we go. That's nice. It's actually just ended up with the hole facing in the right position. As you can see there, just ready to put my clip in. It needs to be so you can kind of see the hole. If the hole were here and here, you're going to have to pop it back, turn it a little bit and push it back through. So I got lucky on that one. Just going to give it one little tap with the hammer just to make sure it is fully inserted, and I'll pop that clip in. So for your wear pad sensor, start on the end, which is furthest from your electrical plug, and this is going to be your outside one just here. And remember that they only fit in one way, so the kind of the fatter side should be in towards the face of the pad, in towards the disc there. Make sure that's properly seated. That feels good. And we'll look at the other end. So next, just tuck that up where that's going to be. Remember the thick side in towards the pad. Let's get my screwdriver. Down in there, and again make sure it's properly seated. It feels good down there. And then the cable that joins the two, I'm just going to hook that up into this little bracket just there. So next, go around to the back. Remember, you've got this speed sensor cable just there, and we need to pop that back into a little bracket on the caliper there. So next, take your electrical connector and making sure we've got it around the right way. Can be quite tricky because of the little metal bracket. There it is. So it's inside the metal bracket. Push it up till hopefully it will click. Yeah, a little click there. Pull it back, make sure it's in there tight. Yeah, we're secure. Finally, remember we've got this little slot just in here for taking this cable just here. This is an aftermarket wear sensor, and the rubber's quite thick on this, so it might be quite tricky to get this into this slot, but we'll persevere with it. So that's the brake job completed. Obviously you need to put your wheels back on and make sure you torque up the wheel nuts to the correct spec. But before you get on your car, before you hop in your car and shoot down the motorway at 70 miles an hour, what you should do is test those brakes, and you should do that just on the driveway outside your own house. Just roll backwards and forwards a few times, make sure those brakes that feel good, make sure they're pinching as they should, they feel correct, and then take it on a little short drive just around the block, again just testing those brakes, keeping an eye on them, making sure you're 100% happy before you go shooting down the highway or the motorway at full speed. And just a quick tip for you before you put the wheel back onto the car, what you can do is you can actually take some of your copper anti-seize, copper grease, and you put a very light coating of it on this face here, obviously not on the face of the actual braking surface of the disc or the rotor, on this inner surface here. This is where the rear of the wheel actually clamps when you put the wheel bolts on. It pulls the rear of your wheel tight in against this, and what can happen over time is you can get a little bit of moisture in there, a little bit of corrosion in there, and it's possible to get your wheel so that it's stuck. And if you've ever had a wheel that's stuck, they can be an absolute nightmare to get off. We've had wheels that have taken literally 20 to 30 minutes to get off, and it's not a lot of fun. That being said, Audis and VWs don't suffer from this very badly at all, but this is an extra little step you can do, so the next time you remove your wheel, this will help that possibility of it binding, and will definitely make it much easier next time. So what you're looking to do is just put a thin layer, really doesn't have to be very thick at all over this surface here. So you want to carry that on until you've literally covered the whole of that surface, and then in addition to that, very important, you want to get these bits here, because this is the other place where the wheels can stick. Sometimes it's a solid circle. In this particular instance on this Q7 here, it's kind of broken down into 3 smaller sections rather than one big circle. That's the other place you want to get a little layer of that grease, and that will really help prevent it. So carry that process on and do this the whole of the face, just with a very light thin coating, as thin as you can get it. So there we have it, guys. That's how you replace the rear pads in the Brembo style caliper. Hopefully this video has been helpful for you. We always ask a little favour in return. Could you at least be sure to hit that like button before you leave us, and also if you could hit subscribe, that really does help out our channel. Be sure to check out our channel. We've got literally hundreds more Audi DIY videos just waiting for you to take a look at, also available on our website totaltechnik.com. Really appreciate it, guys, and we'll see you again in the future. Thank you.